Nearly 13.8 billion years ago, something happened, which we all know as the Big Bang. It was an explosion from a singularity of infinite energy and density, when the entire contents of the universe were in a compressed state of nearly the size of an atom. Big Bang marks the beginning of space and time, or more precisely, space-time. There was no space or time before that. Space-time emerged from the Big Bang itself. The only thing that existed at that point was energy. A lot of it. Energy in its unified form. All the four forces of nature we know were in a unified form of superforce. Then, immediately after the explosion, gravity split from that unified form. After that, in a period called grand unification, the strong nuclear force split from the unified forces. Due to that, a rapid expansion happened in which it is said that the universe expanded from the size of an atom to the size of a grapefruit within the barest fractions of a second, and this is called inflation. During this inflationary period, particles like quarks and electrons formed. At the end of this period, all the particles had formed, which are needed to form the matter which we see around us today. After that, the universe further expanded and cooled down for these particles to combine, to form protons and neutrons. The temperature decreased further and the protons and neutrons combined to form helium, the first element of the universe. All of these happened within roughly a second. Can you imagine that? Due to the continued expansion of universe over the course of about 50,000 years, the temperature dropped down to 3000 Kelvin for electrons to combine with nuclei. And that's how another element of the universe formed, that is, hydrogen. Hydrogen and helium are the two main contents of the total normal matter in the universe, covering most of it. Both of these elements were roaming in the universe in the form of gas, expanding and slowly cooling down, forming gas clouds. Some 200 million years passed away since Big Bang. These gas clouds clustered together, having enough gravity for the formation of galaxies. Inside these clusters, certain patches formed due to increasing gravity, compressing these gases, increasing the pressure and thus increasing temperatures again. But this time, something extraordinary happened, which sowed the seeds of life on our planet, that is, star formation. The density inside these patches increased so much that it led to the fusion of hydrogen atoms into helium, releasing enormous amount of energy in the form of light, becoming what we call light bulbs of the universe, stars. But it was just hydrogen converting into helium. Where did the other elements of our periodic table come from? When these stars get exhausted of almost of their hydrogen to fuel the fusion, they collapse due to gravity. And depending on the size of the star, they take different forms. The bigger the star, the more is the gravity. The biggest ones convert into black holes, bigger ones explode to supernovae, and yet smaller into white dwarfs. Due to the collapse, the pressure and temperature increase so much that the hydrogen and helium fuse to get elements heavier than iron. All the heavier elements we see in our periodic table are created in the core of these massive stars, which are much more massive than the Sun. And just within a second of collapse, it is followed by a huge explosion emitting light equivalent to hundreds of stars that throws the ashes of the star, that is, these elements and dust, into outer space, which made planets, moons, space debris, and just everything. And these explosions also often lead to the formation of other stars, but mainly they create the ingredients of life. How? How these dead atoms combine to generate life? How did life originate on Earth? We are not very sure of when actually life originated or came on Earth. But it is said that it happened some 3.8 billion years ago, when the first single-celled organisms called prokaryotes were born. And for nearly 2 billion years, that is almost half the time of the presence of life on Earth, it was occupied by these prokaryotes. How did they come to life just from those non-lively atoms? Well, there are many theories regarding this, and these theories themselves evolve with time as scientists gather more data about the life and different species living on Earth. Some used to believe that they emerged in the conditions just favorable for life, like warmth, water, etc. But it was outdated, as we saw life on Earth is present even in the most adverse conditions that seem not at all favorable for life to develop, much less to survive, like extreme temperatures, highly acidic environments, etc. These theories would evolve further as we would understand more about life on Earth. It is hard to believe that life just originated from these dead atoms or molecules and developed the complexities we see even in the simplest organisms like prokaryotes, much less in other more complex organisms like humans, but maybe it did. For a very long time, these prokaryotes used to live in the depths of the seas, consuming chemicals, and then as they came near the surface of the water, they evolved to make their own food using sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, releasing oxygen. We know what this process is called, and that's how oxygen came on Earth. There was no oxygen in the air before then. Well, thanks to those prokaryotes, we owe them. After enjoying the Earth alone for 2 billion years, prokaryotes evolved into eukaryotes that were more complex, and then the evolution continued, giving birth to many other species like fish, plants and trees, crocodiles, dinosaurs, birds, insects, chimpanzees, and eventually humans. Humans are only a few 100,000 years old, and we are still evolving. Evolution is a slow process, and we can't observe it directly, but maybe our future generations would wonder on how they arrived on Earth by the evolution of us, their ancestors, as we do to chimpanzees. So now you know the history of the universe, and it's okay if you could not grasp the details. The idea behind telling you this was not to fill you with facts and information, but to make you aware of the bigger idea of the origin of universe and humans. Being aware of our origins makes us humble and strong. Having known how small we are compared to the earth, and how small is the earth itself compared to the universe, our problems seem insignificant in compared to the vastness of this creation. Living in our own reality, it feels like everything revolves around us, but actually it doesn't. We often get controlled and frightened by the pressure of being socially acceptable and respectable and having a status in society. Pressure of having a good career, pressure to prove ourselves, pressure to earn a lot of money, pressure to contribute something to the world, pressure to be creative, pressure to find a meaning in life and live a meaningful life, pressure to be religious or non-religious, pressure to follow a certain belief, and just everything. Remember that we are the ones who created all these things. Everything we see around us, society, religion, science, technology, money, and if we are bound by or afraid of any of these things, it would be an act of disrespecting the freedom we are given. I know that things are not that black and white, and it gets very hard sometimes just to get through life. And there are painful periods in everyone's life, but they are short term. In long term, it has to change, and we must change it because that's life. Even in the hardest times, it is crucial to remember what we actually are, and to never lose that incredible spark to live this life, which is an amazing opportunity to thrive. Whenever I feel low, discouraged, demotivated, anxious, lonely, sad, afraid, insecure, or uncomfortable, I try to remind myself of the infinite vastness of the cosmos and how small we and our problems are compared to that. And this gives me the strength to cope with my problems. I'm not an expert in this, but one thing that I figured out which works for me is that the ultimate meaning of this life would be to live in its entirety, and everything should come after this. No career, no social status, no wealth, no achievement, no relationship would be worth suffocating our lives. Of course, hard work is important, but there's no point if you don't enjoy it. We living on this tiny little planet is literally a 1 in 100 billion chance. Don't be damn serious about life, because in the end we are just a highly complex and evolved form of matter made from energy created by a massive explosion. And remember, we are indeed made of star stuff, as said by Carl Sagan.